I had to explain Hololive to my parents once. This is in August 2023, and I had let slip that the top charting song in Japan was about a horny pirate having an identity crisis because it's by a horny pirate who's having an identity crisis. And I was banking on them not asking me to elaborate. They asked me to elaborate. After several failed attempts at trying to explain, they sort of got it after I compared Vtubers to the Stig from Top Gear. There's not really any direction to this story, I just had no idea how to start a video about Hololive. Even almost half a decade on from the VTuber explosion in 2022, Hololive is doing better than ever. You could almost say that Hololive only grows stronger. But there's something I'm seeing less and less nowadays, that previously people were saying every 3 minutes when it came to explaining Hololive, the idea of YAGOO's dream. YAGOO's dream is a meme about something that we're not entirely sure exists. It stems from a clip of Cover CEO Motoaki Tanigo describing his grand view for Hololive as an idol group similar to AKB48. Many people debate whether Hololive is actually an idol company because of their tenuous relationship with the concept of say-so. Most idols attempt to be as clean as possible, which is at odds with Hololive, because most of what comes out of them can be,
Be quiet, virgin.
Not quite that. That is what tends to rise to the surface, mainly because of the sheer novelty of anime girls saying the naughty word. But upon closer inspection, you notice that Hololive's talents walk a fine line, and they walk it very nicely. The best way I can think of is to describe this line as finding a sort of comparison. So, indulge me if you will. You see, in primary school, when I was about 8, everyone in my year had to stay behind after school on a Tuesday to learn how to sing. And one of the songs they taught us was a song called Daddy Wouldn't Buy Me a Bow Wow. This is a song whose lyrics are about a girl who has a little cat as a pet and would rather have a big dog. Perfectly innocent, even if not properly done justice by children who are about 100 miles away from the nearest cockney. Later in life, I found myself researching this song as part of a dissertation I was doing on a 19th century form of entertainment known as music hall. And this song was written by the queen of music hall, Marie Lloyd. Editor's note, it wasn't written by her, it was actually written by Joseph Tabrar and performed by Vesta Victoria. Marie Lloyd, as well as most other music hall stars, wrote songs like Daddy Wouldn't Buy Me a Bow Wow because they sounded a lot more innocent were the censor ever to read the lyrics. However, the things they were alluding to weren't quite as clean, as were you to take the double meanings out of Daddy Wouldn't Buy Me a Bow Wow, you'd get a song called I'd Like to Be Railed by a Fat Cock, and you probably wouldn't want your primary schooler singing that kind of song unless you're a Minecraft YouTuber. But by dancing around lewdness instead of full-on embracing it, music hall turned something somewhat vulgar into an art form. A lot of the songs are still remembered fondly to this day, and a lot of them were even allowed to take part in a performance in front of the majority of Europe's royalty in the year 1912, which is the predecessor to the Royal Variety Performance. Can you tell I wrote a dissertation on this? I think the philosophy behind music hall's approach to lewdness is the exact same approach Hololive has to it, which is that there are the allusions to being lewd, and some talents are a bit lewder than others, but ultimately it's the towing of the line that allows it to remain much more professional. They strike a yin-yang dichotomy between lewd and say-so, because if they weren't idols, then the moments of unsay-so behaviour would not be as funny, since they don't have anything to juxtapose against. Yet, if they weren't allowed to have their moments of seeming unidol-like, then you wouldn't get as much impact for the moments when we realise, holy shit, these people are really talented. A lot of the Hololive talents are really putting their all into their VTubing careers, and are actively pursuing their dreams through Hololive, which is something that many people see in their favourite idols. Sure, some of the initial draw of VTubers is haha, anime girl, funny word, etc. But the reason that Hololive has risen so far above the competition is the ability to show off the extraordinary qualities of its members. So YAGOO's dream isn't dead, and the talents are a testament to that. All that needs to happen is for everyone to realise that this is a dream that can come true. It takes pressure to make a diamond, and it takes a dark day to find out what truly shines. And I believe YAGOO's dream did come true in a day back in June 2021. June 2021 is a time that sticks out in many Hololive's fans' heads for all the wrong reasons. It was a pretty miserable time, especially in Japan. Just a month prior, a new lockdown had been put into effect, meaning many were stuck indoors, subject to even harder restrictions than previous ones. What made a lot of these restrictions feel so bitter was the fact that they were mainly being done for the highly unpopular 2020 Tokyo Olympics, which which are being held in 2021, much to everyone's dismay. I might be generalizing a tiny bit here, but a lot of the Japanese people I've talked to said that they would have rather seen them cancelled or further postponed than what they had gone for instead, holding them without many audiences. But the main reason June sticks out for Hololive fans was because of what happened on June 9th. It's come to my attention there are people out there who fell into the VTuber rabbit hole after the graduation of Kiryu Coco. Thus, I need to actually say a few things about Kiryu Coco's graduation. Firstly, do your reps. Secondly, Kiryu Coco was a member of Generation 4. Hollow Force, and Force makes the most sense for this gen's name because they were forces of nature. Kiryu Coco most of all. Debuting alongside 4 other incredibly talented individuals, Coco quickly stood out because she had mastered a skill that at the time was both rare and in demand when it came to Hololive knowledge of the English language. Myth might have been considered EN Gen 1, but Kiryu Coco and alongside her Haachama were considered EN Gen 0. It's undeniable how much Kiryu Coco started getting people on board with the idea of English-speaking Hololive talents, but her presence even allowed other talents to gain more overseas fans, with just 2 words in the case of Houshou Marine.
I'm hungry!
But Coco also did a lot to push the limits of what kind of content Hololive could create was, with both Asakoko and meme reviews bridging the gap between the English and Japanese audiences. Yet, for every bridge she built, she inadvertently severed another one. In 2020, she was on a stream with Haachama talking about her analytics page, mentioning how Taiwan made up a sizable chunk of her viewer base, implying that Taiwan was a country. In the eyes of the Chinese viewers, this was a massive no-no, to put it very, very lightly. From there, Hololive was banned in China, the CN branch dissolved, and Kiryu Coco was at the center of a lot of angry Chinese users who she had no intention of antagonizing in the first place. This certainly proved a knock to Coco's confidence, and while I don't know what was going on behind the scenes, on January the 9th, she announced that she was going to be graduating from Hololive. This is a blow both to fans and holomems alike. A Japanese-based talent instrumental in the English-speaking VTuber boom gets attacked for doing something harmless, then is bullied relentlessly, after which they graduate and move to V-Shoujo. I sure hope nothing like that ever happened again. But in these tumultuous times, the protagonist of this story emerged, and they had been right under our noses for a long time. Holomyth's explosion onto the scene was beautiful to watch, especially as English is my first language, but it had one negative effect. And that was that it overshadowed the newest JP generation that had come out only a month beforehand. Hololive Generation 5 got off to a rocky start, especially with Mano Aloe having her contract terminated early on. But the other 4 talents remaining were, well, talented. As I was slightly out of the loop with JP announcements at that point, and a lot of people were focusing on the EN talent, it took me a while to learn about the other members, and it was only through a meme that I found out about the person who would become my Oshi. Momosuzu Nene was in a generation full of people who got a bit of a turbulent start in Hololive, but even amongst them, Momosuzu Nene had quite a rocky path, having auditioned 4 times for Hololive and now only getting in on her 5th. She also got to work on showing that she had more than deserved to belong to an agency as high-prestige as Hololive, especially with her amazing singing voice, which had come from an implied past idol career, which had been tough on her according to some admissions she made on stream. However, Nene wasn't quite out of the woods yet. In fact, she suffered a bit of a setback when it came to the 3D debuts of Generation 5, as for some reason which is currently undisclosed, her model had to be completely retooled and we're not allowed to see the old one anymore. This isn't necessarily because of anything she did, nor anything her artist did, that being the wonderfully talented Nishizawa 5mm, I was going to call it 5mm, that just feels wrong. Nene's design went back to the drawing board, and unfortunately this meant she couldn't get her 3D model until much, much later, and this has been incredibly demoralizing for her. When she announced her 3D debut, she was in tears as she was 3 months behind her genmates, but she debuted to a very eager crowd. Her 3D live trending on Twitter, and it's still her most viewed stream to date. But the 3D fun was not to end, because Nene then got about to creating her own concerts, which were scheduled for June. And the first one was going to be on June the 12th, 3 days after the announcement of Kiryu Coco's graduation. However, despite all the sad news and the shadow it cast over Hololive and its fans, Nene pressed on with the concert and went live. The first song in the Nene Iro Live was the newly released Ori song Lunch With Me, and this video is going to get a little boring if I just keep saying she sang a song and she did it well, because let's face it, I don't know enough about music theory to properly speak on this matter. So instead I'll give you a play-by-play of how I experienced this concert. See, I was scrolling through YouTube that day, in the midst of my own personal misery, and saw the stream recommended to me. And I do enjoy myself the odd 3D concert, so what the heck. Even if I hadn't watched Nene before, I had still heard of her escapades with the high-profile her first 3D live reach, so I thought, go on. So I clicked on it, and I was greeted by the sound of Boken Desho Desho. Hey, I love me some Haruhi, and Nene was doing it quite a bit of justice. In fact, it's clear that this tuber I had barely watched at that point was really good at singing. So I decided I would procrastinate all of that nothing I was doing at that moment, and I put the monitor on full screen. The next few songs were absolute bangers, and I was entertained, but me being entertained by Hololive isn't a rare occasion, and certainly not cause for me to write a video essay about it 3 years afterwards. No, things take a turn for the profound at the 47-minute mark. Because that is when Nene starts her cover of Sparkle by Radwimps. Full disclosure, Radwimps is my kryptonite. With a lot of their songs, I can't bring myself to listen to them unless I'm in the right headspace, Sparkle being one of those songs, and it hits like a truck in Kimi no Na wa, my favourite anime and favourite film of all time. But even in this completely new context, well, Sparkle was still hitting me in the feels. Nene was giving this song her all, the tenderness that it deserved, though clearly there was something else in her voice as she was singing it. And 6 minutes into the song, an instrumental break gave her the time to take a break from the singing and talk to us directly.
みんな今とってもいろんなことがあって辛い時期かと思いますが、今日はネネが少しでもみんなに元気を与えられるように、頑張って練習をしてきました。皆さんどうでしたか？ネネのおかげでちょっとでも元気が出たらいいな。ありがとね。
I don't speak much Japanese, but even with what little I could grasp back then, I could tell that she was talking about how times were tough for everyone. Having looked at a translation, my initial hunch was entirely correct, and Nene's message here is delivered with incredible sincerity. Viewing it as one big chunk of text, like I'm probably displaying it up here, won't do it justice, because listening to it as part of the concert shows that this was something Nene rehearsed, since everything she said is timed perfectly to fit in with the music, and her pronunciation is very clear, so even someone who doesn't speak Japanese as a first language can understand her. Despite it being rehearsed, it doesn't feel fake. Instead, it feels like she simply found the most articulate way to speak truthfully from the heart. Her performance of that song was bloody legendary, with her being able to pull off something heartfelt, resonant, impeccable, yet at the same time, something that felt so undeniably human. But that wasn't the moment YAGOO's dream was saved. No, that moment came a few seconds later, because immediately afterwards she starts singing her Ore song Nene ne Daibakuso, a song whose chorus sounds like this. It's a little hard to memorize the lyrics, I know. When I watched that stream, I had never heard that song before. So the fact she could follow up a heartfelt rendition of a song designed to speak to a tender feeling of love that transcends time and space with a song about how Nene's name is literally just one syllable repeated multiple times slightly floored me. And honestly, I kinda fuck with that. The performance was so energetic, it lagged the motion capture she was using, and that somehow made it even better. Halfway through the song, she was running out of air, yet she still kept going. And this wasn't a concert for the sake of a birthday or milestone, so there was no merch announcement at the end, so when the song ended, the concert ended along with it, on a high note unlike anything we were prepared for. Reflecting on this moment 3 years later, in my opinion, this is everything YAGOO's dream stood for. This was something that could only be achieved by a true idol, and it was conveyed entirely using VTuber technology. A moment where she connected with her audience on an emotional level before truly lifting our spirits. There are many moments where we've been able to see our Oshi at the top of their game, and many where our Oshi has been able to help us see the day through, no matter what it throws at us. But to have them this close together is something that one sees rarely, even with such high caliber as the Hololive talents. Perhaps I look back on this fondly because, as said, I was in the midst of my own low period, so to have this moment was something special, but At the same time, I believe that the importance of this moment comes to the fact it was during a low period for Hololive as well. The moment a company or entertainer are doing well will be seen as the norm at the time, but the future will remember them by how they reacted when they were at their lowest. We saw this earlier in the year with Niji Sanji's reputation in the EN scene going up in flames thanks to the Selen situation. In these moments, when everyone's reputation is on the line, it's up to the talents to find a way of being the light to guide everyone out the dark, but it's also up to these companies not to hide that light under a bushel. We stick with our Oshi because of times like these, when we know our Oshi is willing to stick with us. Also, I love Nene so goddamn much, it's unreal. I love our wife.